So much for giving up your Sunday morning to come here and keep me company. Let's kick off, shall we, Bethany, with the Sunday Times and the King's fear over Canada and the US.
Yes, the King has said that he wants unity in uncertain times, which is probably as political as you can assume the King is going to get, at least publicly. And has said that the issue of Canada and the US is particularly on his mind at the moment. This is, of course, because US President Donald Trump is saying that he would like Canada to be the 51st US state. Being a Commonwealth country, the King obviously has an interest in that not happening. And this is kind of part of this long saga, one of Donald Trump's many master plans. And the King is getting involved, which I think is something we wouldn't normally expect from a royal. He is more political than I think any royal we've had previously. And this is him, I think, as much as he can, kind of saying he'd really like to press the brakes as much as he can on this one.
Of course. It's been interesting, hasn't it, Katrina, using the King in this soft diplomacy role that certainly appealed to Donald Trump with that letter inviting him to a second state visit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we'll see how much that translates into action and actual influence on Donald Trump, because, of course, the King was Keir Starmer's... I nearly said trump card there,
but
pardon the accidental pun. But Donald Trump loves the pomp and ceremony of the royal family. He loves to be flattered. He loves to have his ego massaged. And so it was an early move from Keir Starmer, but a smart move from Keir Starmer. And it worked. So we'll see whether this soft diplomacy from King Charles has any influence, because, of course, as Bethany says, he's the head of state for Canada and he's got a vested interest.
Equally, everyone talking about King Charles's playlist earlier this week. What did you make of that?
I thought it was a pretty smart move from the palace to try and make him relevant. I'm not sure if it was the King's idea or not, but yeah, I think it definitely makes him seem a bit more approachable and human, and it's an interesting choice of
by
songs.
a touch of Bob Marley.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm down with that. Let's move on then to the Sunday Mirror, Katrina. Labour's war on yobs. What is this all about? Antisocial behaviour, that kind of stuff? What's on the agenda here?
Yeah, so blight on English and Welsh town centres, antisocial behaviour is massively on the rise. So Yvette Cooper is looking at ways of tackling that in the new crime and policing bill that's coming up. So the suggestion is that there's going to be new respect orders that can be issued to try and tackle some of these problems. And it's a long way from David Cameron's hug a hoodie kind of rhetoric from back in 2006.
Wow.
Quite a throwback, but UK Labour and Keir Starmer very much trying to frame themselves as being tough on crime and having this crackdown. One of the things is enhanced jail sentences for people who are carrying out antisocial behaviour in town centres. But you have to wonder where the places in prisons coming from, because we've just had lots of talk about overcrowding and having to deal with that. But yes, they are trying to make themselves look tough on crime.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, isn't it, Bethany? You see a couple of teenagers in the city centre in Newcastle, a respect order won't mean very much to them.
Well, interestingly, the part of these new powers would also ban these repeat offenders from town centres. So that, I think, would be the argument, sort of saying it wouldn't just be jail, but obviously jail sentences are the kind of shiniest card in this pack. But I think this is kind of part of Labour's push to show themselves as community-focused. We've just had a week where all of the big stories have been about kind of international affairs. And I think this is a kind of play by Labour in a way to say, look, we know what communities want. We know what local towns, smaller communities versus the big cities need and want from their politicians. And I think it's kind of a way for them to appeal to voters who they might be slightly losing their grip on at the moment.
Interesting you should say that. Telegraph, this is a story, Bethany, page 7. Australia considers joining the coalition of the willing, because I wonder whether Donald Trump was the answer that Sir Keir Starmer needed to be this world leader, to be up there, centre and fronter of steering the agenda, you know, a former human rights lawyer, the perfect negotiator to really put behind his first 6 months of a Labour government behind him that, you know, for many didn't really go to plan. But here we are, Australia are joining this coalition of the willing, and this is after the Prime Minister's phone call with the leader.
It's so interesting you say that. When you speak to MPs, even ones that are really loyal to Keir Starmer, they've all said this is the most comfortable that I have seen him in the last few weeks on the global stage, sort of wrangling, being, as he said himself, you know, he wants to be that bridge between Ukraine and the US. And with Australia potentially joining, at least according to the Telegraph, that kind of quells any criticism that Keir Starmer is getting, that this is him just trying to get back into the European Union. This is a much broader thing. And, you know, that hasn't been the principal comment about all of these moves, but you have heard it. You have heard people criticise Keir Starmer for being too in with Europe. And this just broadens it out, shows him again as this leader on the world stage, and is another as well sort of hit to Donald Trump about who he is facing.
And I wonder at some point whether there needs to be a European, a Western European representative talking to Putin. And is Keir Starmer potentially the person that could do that?
It would be incredibly interesting if it was. I mean, he is this bridge. This is kind of the thing. He doesn't represent the European Union, despite what I've said some critics might be saying. And he does clearly have a relationship with Donald Trump. He has negotiating power with Donald Trump. He's got the king, which, as we've said, is a really key kind of pawn in this play. No offence to His Majesty. But yeah, if he ends up being the person to talk to Putin, as you say, someone is going to have to, I assume, that will just bolster his footing on that world stage.
I've described it as newsageddon. There's always news, bombs dropping here, there and everywhere. And a big one on the Sunday Express, Katrina, is 6.6 billion, the cost of asylum seeker support revealed, they say. What's the truth?
Well, Sunday Express are clearly very pleased with this story because they're running it over 5 pages.
Oh,
it's
wow.
the front page and then 4 pages inside. So they're saying the UK spent £6.6 billion on various different support systems for asylum seekers, and they're really varied, and they've laid them out bit by bit. And you have to wonder what the problem is, really. There's £1.1 million on English language classes. Of course, when people are coming here, when they're seeking asylum, we want them to integrate. We want them to have support systems, SIM cards for mobile phones, bus passes. If we don't want to be spending this amount of money on supporting asylum seekers, perhaps allow them to work when they come here. You know, there are policy decisions that are made that mean that we need to spend more money on support systems that we might not have to. So it's a kind of screaming headline. It's very alarmist. But actually, you know, one of the things is £300,000 on friendship systems, setting people up with support systems around them. You can't really complain about that, I think, if you want to treat people humanely.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about this story in the context of recent news, we've obviously recently heard the government say they're going to be cutting aid budgets in order to boost defence. Our money for refugees in the UK comes from that aid budget. So when we're looking at how much money the government spends on things like this, whether that is housing asylum seekers, supporting them with community initiatives, helping them speak English, that the money is going to potentially come from the aid budget. And so when it comes to things that are going to be cut, I think this is going to be kind of first on the line, which, as you say, in terms of assimilation and worries about having SIM cards, being able to get to school. Often that's what bus passes for if they're unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Then those are the things that I think will be on the line.
OK, we're going to do a bit of a gear change now. This is also in the Express. It's page 10. There we go.
Victory for the Express.
Victory.
Victory for the Express. I was, as a young
cheeky
newspaper...
bottom.
2 of them. As a young newspaper reporter, I was always told that if you're having a campaign in your newspaper, you need to have an achievable objective and something that's easy to explain to readers. And here we have a classic of the genre. There's a nudist speech. Sign went up saying that it was a nudist speech. The local parish council said that this was deeply inappropriate. There was a stooshy. The Sunday Express intervened. Signs come down, and now everyone can bear whatever they want.
Oh, wow. This is the story that we needed here on Sky News Breakfast, just to digest.